thank you very much for that absolutely charming introduction. That was very, very kind of you. I'm not certain I'm going to be able to live up to that. That was really lovely. So I'm going to be talking about the science of laughter, and if I have a takeaway from this, I want you to understand that it really is a behaviour worth studying, and that there really can be a scientific study of laughter. I have to emphasise this because people frequently think that it's a stupid thing to study. I think a lot of my colleagues, I might as well say I study tinsel, I study whiskers on kittens, you know. And part of that is because laughter can just seem really stupid and strange. So this is an example of some laughter that was going around social media from a French television programme a couple of years ago. The programme's called C'est mon choix, it's my choice, and the episode is called Mon rire ne passe pas inaperçu. My laughter does not pass unnoticed.
Ah oui, mais
vous êtes célibataire, c'est pas à cause de votre rire?
J'espère pas.
Non.
I mean, I think that's fair. Yeah, I would notice that laughter, that is unusual laughter. If we think about what laughter actually is, it's a very peculiar behaviour. It's more like a different way of breathing than it is a different way of speaking. If we zoom back in time, the first scientist, I'm going to come back to that, but the first scientist to really take laughter very seriously actually was Charles Darwin, and he really thought laughter mattered. He was very interested in how some emotions, not all emotions, but some of the emotions that humans experience seem to have an older evolutionary role because you find them in other animals, like rage, anger can look very similar across animals, fear can look very similar, sadness can look very similar, and in this group of emotions that he thought had this sort of evolutionary importance, this older role in mammals, he thought laughter really mattered. He thought it was an expression of joy, and he used to go along to London Zoo and get keepers to tickle baboons for him, and he would describe the animal's eyes brightly. It's very, very wholesome. And indeed, he was absolutely right. You do find examples of laughter in other animals. So this is the late comedian Robin Williams meeting the late gorilla Coco. She's sign language. She speaks sign language, so she's signing "tickle me" at the start there, and then he's hard for him to tickle her. She's bored and he's looking at what's going on in his t-shirt. But when he manages to get her laughing, when the tickling works, it starts to look extremely familiar. So that's something that is. Turns out all the people we're working with apes are going, of course they laugh. And we are apes. So laughter is very, very similar in humans, chimpanzees, orangutans, gorillas. We are apes. The facial expressions there, the movements are very, very, very similar. She's just like, let's not waste each other's time. What's going on in there? Well, what about other? We are apes. So it's maybe not too surprising that laughter is not too dissimilar between us and the gorilla. But laughter, like behaviour, has even been described in rats. A man was called Jan Panksepp, who was looking at distress vocalisations in rats. He noticed that rats made completely different sounds when they were playing with other rats. So they wondered if that was laughter, so they started tickling the rats, and the rats make the same sound when they're tickled. And if the same scientist tickles the same rat every day, they make that sound when they see you come into the lab in the morning, and people aren't normally that keen to see scientists first thing. That's very, so in fact the rat there was making this, it's like a high-pitched squeak sound. It doesn't sound like our laughter, but the rat there was making the sound when it was tickled, and then it carried on making it when the person stopped tickling it. So it's maybe trying to encourage the behaviour. So it's possible, okay, we're finding it in animals, including gorillas and rats. Maybe there's more laughter out there. And Panksepp, who did the work with the rats, he said he thought that actually laughter functioned as an invitation to play. So Darwin thinks it's joy. Panksepp thinks it's an invitation to play. Those don't have to be two different things. And play really matters to mammals. We're mammals, dogs are mammals, there are lots of mammals out there. And one of the things that really characterises mammals is we've got enormous brains. And we have a very extended period of being juveniles when we do things like go to school to grow our big brains, but we also play. And across the mammal world, you'll find all mammals, even mammals that will grow up to be asocial predators, like a tiger, will play with other tigers when they are infants, because that's one of the ways they're learning about their world and developing their big brains. So it really matters. And what you have to do, because play is highly ambiguous, the same behaviour could just be violent, you need to show that you're being playful, and this intention to play that you show with different behaviours. So mammals have something called the play face. The dog on the little Jack Russell, the black and white one there is doing play face. It's a sort of loose, open, unthreatening, smiling face. All the dogs at the bottom left are doing it as well. In fact, play is so important to dogs. They have another signifier of it. When dogs do this, it's the play bow, and it means everything after this is a game. I might growl, but I'm not mad at you, because we are playing a game. And when there's a noise associated with this, Panksepp says, that's laughter. So it's possible that there's more laughter out there, and another scientist called Greg Bryant thought, well, if there really is a relationship between play and laughter vocalisations, because no one's out there looking for laughter, we should go out and see, well, are there play vocalisations that you find in other mammals? And he went out and basically for every mammal he looked at, he found there were play vocalisations. Even really unlikely mammals like cows and weasels have play vocalisations. Actually, maybe not too surprising about weasels. That suggests that there might be a lot more laughter out there in the world of mammals when play is happening. This could be where we're finding cow laughter. They even found that you were getting specific play vocalisations in non-mammals. They looked at a type of New Zealand parrot called a kea. Has anybody here ever encountered a kea in New Zealand? Yeah, did it chew your shoe? Did it do something to your car? Chewing other people's cars. They are naughty parrots who will come and strip the windscreen wipers off your car or maintain eye contact with you while they eat a hole in your shoe. They're extremely social, they hang out in big groups, and they have a specific vocalisation that they make when they're playing. So it could be that we're actually seeing it not just extending to mammals, it may be something that you find in intelligent social animals in the bird world. So if we go back to the differences, but I say laughter is more like a form of different way of breathing, that is a different way of speaking. This is speaking. So this is zooming inside somebody's head using our MRI machine to look at what's happening when she's talking. And human speech is a whole other talk, but it is comfortably the most complex sound in nature. No other animal can make the sounds we make, because no other animal has actually got a vocal tract like us. It's absolutely extraordinary what we can do with our voice. She's just saying nursery rhymes. Can you see how quickly her tongue is moving? And her jaws are moving, her lips are moving, her voice box is moving up and down. It's like a symphony of complexity producing the sounds of speech. And that's under a very distinct and very human pattern of brain control. So when you talk or sing or do something voluntary with your voice, you're using brain regions that run down the side of your brain here, the regions shown in pink there up on the top left. And they are really important because they're associated with voluntary use of your voice. And in fact, we are the only animals with really distinct brain areas that do this. We have very, very good control, voluntary control over our voices. And we have brain areas that do this voluntary control that other animals simply don't have. Most other mammals, when they vocalise, it's very reactive and often emotional. So we've got a very different ability to talk, partly because of how our anatomy works, and partly because of how our brain is controlling that. In contrast, when we laugh, all of that fine control goes away. Can you see the tongue's just sitting at the bottom of the mouth? She's opening her mouth, and then she's making a lot of sound, but none of that fancy control is happening. We're coming to exactly how much movement is happening there in a second. But this is basically how all other mammals vocalise. There's nothing fancy going on with what the tongue's doing, opening their mouth and sort of pushing some sound out. And consistent with that, other mammals have a completely different brain system from that voluntary system I just described that they use to control vocalisations. It runs down the middle of the brain, and we still have that brain control system. So if you make a sound when something surprises you, or something frightens you, or something makes you laugh, you're actually activating this older emotional network. So it is literally more like an animal call than it is like speech, both in terms of how we make it and in terms of the brain systems. So a while ago, we had a mouse somewhere in our flat, and I was home alone, and I thought it ran over my foot, and I screamed. And I screamed for long enough that I had time to think, I don't know why I'm screaming. I am not frightened of mice, and there is nobody else here. But it was a completely involuntary vocalisation, and it was driven by this older network. And if you have a stroke or brain damage that damages those lateral fields, those fields at the side of your brain that are used for voluntary use of the voice, it's very easy to get a problem with speech production. It's called an aphasia, and it's very common following a stroke. People who have aphasia and who can no longer speak or speak easily, they still produce emotional vocalizations. They will cry, they will laugh, they will scream, they will swear. And that seems to be because this older pathway, this emotional pathway, that's still preserved. So we've got these two different networks, and to actually think about what's happening, so I was saying that she was moving a lot, but actually none of the movements were happening, were visible, because we were looking inside her head, not the rest of her body. So to actually think about the sound of laughter, you need to zoom right in on the body itself. So what you're all doing right now is you're using your rib cage, not a part of the body neuroscientists pay much attention to. You're using it all the time to what scientists call stay alive. It's called metabolic breathing. You're all doing it, don't stop. And what you do is you use the muscles between your ribs, you contract them. That pulls your ribcage up and out, and that causes negative pressure inside the lungs, and that pulls air into the lungs. You relax those muscles, and that just pushes the air back out. So if I was to put what's called a breath belt, so it's just measuring that movement, on your chest wall right now, I would see something that looks like that smooth in, out, that we can see up on the top row there. It's very important, it's keeping you alive, please don't stop, okay? If I kept that same breath belt on you, and I asked you to say something, what you would see is something very different. Because what happens when we talk is we breathe completely differently. Remember all that voluntary part of the brain controlling this. We take a breath in, and then we very, very precisely use those same muscles now to control how air is actually flowing out through our mouths and how we're able to make the sounds of speech basically on that outflow of air. If I keep talking without taking another breath, intercostal muscles start to have to work really, really hard to push the air out. One of these days I'm going to pass out at the end of doing that, but I think we're okay. You're probably thinking, that's rather strange, Sophie, but actually we don't talk at all because we can do this. You can tell how long somebody's going to speak for by the size of a breath they take before they start to speak. So it's actually like the rhythm of speech and sentences and phrases and song is actually built around these breath cycles. So it's very important. Again, only humans can do this. Only humans have this kind of breath control. When we start laughing, all of that goes away. And what you get are enormous, really, really fast deflections pushing in of the chest wall. And that's basically just giving you the ha, ha, ha sound. Each one of those ha-has is just one squeeze of the ribcage, and it's happening much faster than it does for speech or breathing, and it's happening really, really, really large deflections, so much bigger and much faster. So it's giving you a lot of very simple noise, effectively. And we do not understand the brain basis behind this, but if there is a competition between breathing, talking, and speaking, it is the breathing, laughing, and speaking. It is the laughter that will win. It will stop you breathing. It will stop you talking. It's squeezing air out of you. It is trying to kill you. It is a relatively dangerous activity. Don't stop laughing, but it is the reason why you feel quite tired sometimes when you've been laughing. That's why. There's a lot going on. So we were very interested in laughter. I've been looking at non-verbal emotional vocalizations. So these things we make with our voices in addition to speech, being really disgusted and you go, ugh. I was interested in that. And I had a PhD student, and we were trying to work out, this is going to sound very silly, but there's an argument that says effectively voices actually aren't very good ways of conveying emotion. Faces are much better at this. And we thought, well, can that really be true? And so we were looking at sort of people's recognition of these non-verbal emotional expressions. One of the problems you run into with this kind of work is that if you only study in your own community, you don't know how generalisable this recognition could be. So you're getting good results. Okay, people in the UK recognise these noises, but is that just because we've all grown up together kind of thing? So Disa, who's my PhD student, did several trips out to work with the Himba communities in northern Namibia, and they are perfect for people studying things like emotion or people studying human behaviour in general, because they're not contaminated by our culture. They live extremely isolated lives. She was driving for days to find them and travelling with an interpreter because she did not speak their language. And they don't have electricity, they don't have a written culture, they have not encountered somebody from outside of the Himba community ever before. A couple of times a year, a couple of the men will have interactions with Angolan cattle dealers, and that's it. So if they recognise non-verbal emotional expressions recorded back in London, and vice versa, then we're seeing something that might actually look like some kind of maybe more universality to elements of how these emotions are recognised from the voice. Now, this is a man from a Himba community who is expressing an emotion. I want you to see if you can work out from the sound he makes what emotion he's expressing. No prizes for spotting that he was laughing at the end there. You can hear other people laughing as well. Any guess what he was expressing before then? Did it sound positive or negative? Get your hand up there. Yeah, go on you. What do you think? Happy? Yeah, it's positive, isn't it? It's very positive. Does it sound high in energy or low in energy? High in energy. He's actually expressing triumph, celebration. And people back in the UK don't hear that as necessarily sounding triumphant or celebratory. Conversely, if he hears a person from London going, woo! Or yes! He doesn't hear that as sounding celebratory. That's a good example of an emotion that is really culturally specific in how it's expressed. And then at the end you get the laughter, and the laughter is immediately recognisable. And that's basically what we found. We found that people have done this work before with faces, and they knew that emotional expressions like angry faces, disgusted faces, fearful faces, sad faces, surprised faces, they are recognised cross-culturally, and we found that the noises that express these, non-verbal noises, are also recognised cross-culturally. So if you're in the middle of the Namibian desert and you get vomit on your hand and you go, ugh, the person with you would know what you meant even if they didn't understand a single word of your language. The only positive emotion, and that we were also putting in positive emotions, that had this same profile, the English recognised the Himba recognised the English, was laughter. So that really did look like very strong evidence that it is cross-culturally recognised, it's a universal behaviour. Something else that we noticed quite early on with laughter is that when you hear laughter, you're primed to join in. Now there is a literature on this. Laughter is behaviourally contagious. A bit like, quite often when you're yawning just because somebody else has yawned. We do the same thing with laughter. And actually, contagious behaviours are quite common in nature. If you look at contagious yawning, you find it in humans, you find it in dogs, you find it in chimpanzees, you even find it in budgerigars and tortoises. These are all social animals, and it seems to be a kind of a learnt behaviour. Infants don't do anything contagiously like this. And it's also highly social. You're much more likely to catch a yawn or a laugh from someone you know than someone you don't know. And that's true for us, but it's also true for dogs. Dogs will catch a yawn from a dog they know, but not a dog they don't know. Chimps will catch a yawn from a chimp they know, not a chimp they don't know. There are quite a lot of these behaviours out there. Even things like scratching, that can be behaviourally contagious. And in orangutans, scratching is contagious. Orangutans scratch themselves when they're nervous. And there'll be an orangutan getting a bit anxious and scratching themselves, and there'll be another orangutan going, oh yeah, mate, I know what you mean. So blinking, that's also contagious. A lot of this behavioural contagion out there, but within this world of behavioural contagion, where it just seems to be like a functional sign of affiliation, I'm joining in to show I know you, only humans laugh contagiously. There is no contagious laughter that's been found in any other animal, which is very interesting. And we kind of stumbled across this when we were scanning people listening to different kinds of emotional vocalizations, and we found that when people hear laughter, you get loads of activation shown up there in green in parts of the brain that actually aren't auditory bits of the brain. They're parts of the brain that you would use if you yourself was to move your face into a smile or a laugh. And that's really interesting. It looks like when you're, I mean, this is extremely boring having your brain scanned, but even when you're having your brain scanned, we were doing this with adults who spent many years learning to laugh contagiously. You're getting ready to join in, even if you don't actually laugh. So it's very, very powerful. Contagious laughter is extremely powerful. It's extremely hard not to do it. If you ask somebody why they just laughed at something when it looks like behavioural contagion, they'll often tell you it's because something was funny. It's most likely they're just rationalising just this kind of immediacy of contagion. And just to show you an example of how powerful this is, I've got two men here, again trying to do a television programme. So the man on the right, he hears something that makes him laugh. And he starts laughing very spontaneously. He cannot stop laughing. Even actually, you can see on that photograph, he's already trying not to laugh. He's very seriously getting the giggles. The man on the left is worried about this. He's concerned about what's happening, but he also keeps laughing and smiling, particularly when his colleague starts a new peal of laughter, because he's just catching by contagion the laughs from his colleague.
We're trying to get out there in the records, but so we're just going to thank you. I'm going to thank you.
Okay.
I cried in the night hours, yeah. You heard my cry. Over my feet.
Worried.
This world, I still love you.
Really worried face coming up.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Why so worried?
I was actually,
That's why.
I certainly did enjoy it. What's going on in the spirit? He's getting the Holy Ghost over here. We want to. He's still loving you. We want to get the address, and we want to give you a T-shirt here. Send him a T-shirt right here. Right. Your consciousness. Enjoy that, Danny, Florida.
Oh, I love this singing. Oh, it broke me up. Oh, we'll be right back.
So I always think I can stop that clip sooner than I can. I have to see it to the end. Two different kinds of laugh, completely. One man is completely helpless with laughter. He's trying so hard not to laugh at the start, and then he's lost. By the time he's gone, he's absolutely lost to the laughter. His colleague, staying on top of things, talking to the camera, and still, these flashes of laughter and smiling happening continuously, particularly at every onset, and that's following just pure contagion. So if we just zoom out a bit and think about laughter from a sort of higher perspective, it's a really interesting behaviour, and I would count myself in this. Almost everything we think we know about it is wrong. If you ask people what makes you laugh, we'll talk about comedy and jokes and humour. And of course we do laugh at those things, but actually most of the time when we laugh, just like contagious laughter, it's happening because of social reasons. So you're 30 times more likely to laugh if there is somebody else with you than if you're on your own. And you'll laugh more if you know those people, and you'll laugh more if you like those people. We still use it to show our playful intentions. So children laugh when they're playing, adults laugh when they're playing. My partner and our son like to pretend to strangle each other whenever I take a photograph of them, and they laugh to show they're not actually in mortal, deadly earnest. Everybody laughs more than they think they do. So there's not a huge number of studies on laughter, but there are quite a few studies where people have asked people how often they laugh, and then simply looked at how often they laugh. Everybody underestimates it. Everybody's laughing more. And I think that's because often laughter is such a normal part of social interactions, we almost don't remember it, like we don't remember that we were all breathing. You notice when laughter isn't there, and it shouldn't be. It should have been there. What's wrong? So it's like the absence. That would be strange. Its presence is normal and therefore almost invisible to us. Laughter is also strongly associated with friendship and intimacy. So if you take a recording of two people laughing from a conversation and you just play the laughter back to total strangers, people can tell from that how close two friends are. So you give away a huge amount of information about how you feel about people when you're laughing with them. And you can also sort of reverse engineer that. So there was a study from Oxford that showed if you can get people laughing, they will tell you more intimate things about themselves. Because normally you would laugh with people you are close to, therefore if you're close to somebody, you're kind of hacking that relationship. We will also use laughter to show that we're okay. So it's possible that this man did not want to be covered in a great quantity of yellow goo in the workplace for charity, but he's laughing to show that he's not actually furious about it, even if he's really looking forward to it being over. It's a very common behaviour thing, and you know, many different small episodes of this, like I tripped on some quantity of hardened cement outside our offices last year and fell over, and a student came to help me, and I was like, ha ha ha, no, I'm fine. Actually, my knee hurt quite a lot, but I was, you know, no one needs to worry about this, I do not need to be taken to hospital. I was showing with the laughter. And in fact, that upgrades to really stressful situations. So there's a study done by Robert Levinson in the US where he's been doing a longitudinal study. So over years, he's been studying married couples in California. He gets them into the lab and he stresses them out while he wires them up to a polygraph. Now, polygraphs, you might have heard of them as lie detectors. They're not really lie detectors. What they're doing is just measuring many different things about the state of your body. So how fast is your heart beating? What's your blood pressure doing? How are you sweating? So they're wired up to a polygraph, and then he stresses them out by asking them to have a conversation, face-to-face conversation, about a problem in their relationship. So just run that one through your head for a second. Think about looking into the face of a loved one and saying, here's a thing you do that irritates me. And what he finds is everybody gets stressed out by this. It is a stressful thing to do. You can see people's physiological state change. The couples who use what he calls positive affect, but he means laughter and smiling, they not only immediately get less stressed, but they also, remember this is a study going on over years, they're more likely to stay together and they're happier in their relationship. And it's not because laughter is a bit of magic dust that makes everything all right, because it only works if both members of the couple laugh. If one person's going, I snore terribly, don't I? I'm really sorry about that. And the first person's going, it's a massive problem, you've got to stop. Nobody feels better, and statistically, they're less likely to stay together. So it's actually laughter's an index about that relationship. And I don't think that's limited to romantic relationships. I think what we mean by friendship are people with whom we can negotiate a better mood in a difficult situation together by using an emotional expression like laughter. So what all this means in practice is that most of the laughter you encounter happens in conversations. Humans, even in a world where we could be doing everything digitally, we still want to talk to each other. Spoken language is the dominant mode for conversations, or sign language. Conversations, talking to people in real life, is the main way that we still communicate with each other. And that's where laughter lives. It lives in a way where it's letting you express, behavioural you can be showing that you're part of the same group as people, you know each other, you are just catching the laugh from each other. It's also used to, you're laughing in a way that's giving away how close you feel about people. You're also using the laughter communicatively. People will use laughter to show they remember something, they understand something, they agree with something that's been said. And in fact, at any one point in time, often the person who laughs most is the person who's talking. So they're using their laughter communicatively to get people to join in. So it's not, and then of course we can also be laughing at things that are funny. That does happen, we laugh at funny stuff, that's in there as well. So it's a hall of mirrors, it's an unbelievably complex behaviour, laughter. And it's never neutral. When you hear laughter, you are always trying to work out what it means. You're always trying to understand it. And we did that, we investigated this in a study where we basically collected laughs from people and we did whatever it took to make people laugh. So we have really spontaneous laughter, like the man with the glasses with the laughing at the hymn. And then we got those same people to laugh in a more communicative way. We said, imagine your friend's told a joke and you're laughing because you like your friend. It's not, you're not helpless laughing. So tell me what you think this laugh is. Does it sound spontaneous or does it sound more like a laugh in a conversation? Spontaneous, yeah, that's spontaneous laughter. In fact, that's me laughing. I have got a very high-pitched laugh when I laugh really hard. I could never sing that high. I would love to be able to get my voice up there. Voluntarily, I can't do it. When I'm laughing, it goes straight up there and stays there. So it's a very, very strong tell to a spontaneous laugh from me. How about this laugh? That's more conversational, isn't it? It doesn't sound like that person's really helplessly laughing. Now, people are pretty good at telling those two different kinds of laughs apart. Those spontaneous laughs, they're higher in pitch, they tend to be longer, and also you get those, do you remember that clip of the French people I played you at the start? All those bizarre squeaks and whistles and sounds. That happens with spontaneous laughter much more. In contrast, that conversational laughter is lower in pitch, it's shorter, but also, certainly in the laughter we've collected, it's frequently nasal, very nasal. That laugh has a kind of quality to it. And that looks like, in fact, you could not do that. If you were laughing spontaneously, you would not be able to have that kind of control of your soft palate. So we think that's people actually showing you. They're not trying to pretend this is spontaneous laughter. This is laughter I'm giving you. I'm voluntarily giving you this laughter. We took people back into the brain scanner, and here we did a different thing. So we played them these lots of different laughs, so these two different kinds from different people, and we also, because we didn't want people to realise it was what was going on, we put in loads of other sounds to try and distract them. And what we found was, it doesn't matter. People are just listening, they're not being asked to do anything, and we're taking pictures of their brain in action when they hear these different sounds. The brain is still responding differently to the two different kinds of laughs. So you get more activation in auditory parts of the brain, shown in blue, when you hear that spontaneous laughter. Now, so the auditory parts of the brain are sitting actually not far above your ears, on the left and right sides of the brain. And we think either that's because you hear sounds you just don't hear in any other context. When people are laughing in a spontaneous way, you get all these peculiar pitches and squeaks and whistles. That could be what's going on, or it could be because it's really unambiguous. This is, okay, clearly, no messing around, this is somebody laughing spontaneously. Interestingly, if anything, we get more activation to that conversational, communicative laughter. And now it's not in auditory parts of the brain, it's in these kind of midline areas projecting up here, like this. Now those are brain areas associated with what psychologists call mentalizing, thinking about what somebody else is thinking. So when you hear somebody laughing, they're not helpless with laughter, there's clearly an intention behind it. Maybe they're laughing to, ha ha ha, they're trying to pretend they thought a joke was funny, or they are laughing because they like their friend, or they're laughing because they remember Dave did that stupid thing and he do be like that. They're laughing to cover up being maybe embarrassed or in pain or upset. Maybe they're laughing to try and get someone to like them. Maybe they're laughing to try and get away with a lie. People lie. People laugh for a lot of different reasons. It's an extremely complex behaviour by the time you've got some adult humans laughing. When you hear somebody clearly not laughing in a spontaneous way, you're trying to work out what's going on. And you're doing that all the time. Interestingly, that priming effect that I showed you before, I thought we were going to get a much bigger priming effect in the brain to the spontaneous laughter because everybody rates it as more contagious. Therefore, we should get more priming. That's not what we find. What we find is we get exactly the same amount of priming in the brain for both different kinds of laughter. The difference is across participants. So we took people out of the scanner, and then we gave them the two different kinds of laughs, and we got them to classify them into two different kinds of laughs. And what we find is their score on that, their accuracy on that, correlates with how much they showed this priming response in the brain when they heard any laughter. So it's not just contagion. If you are primed to join in when you hear laughter, you actually seem to understand the laughter better. And that's interesting because it suggests there might be significant individual differences that we could look at. So this is an example of one of those significant differences. With my colleagues at UCL, we had an opportunity to work with teenage boys who are at risk of psychopathy. So these are teenage boys who have conduct disorders, so they're poorly behaved, and they also score highly in what's called callous and unemotional traits. What this means in practice is they are badly behaved and they don't care if they hurt somebody else. We also had a neurotypical group of teenage boys, and then we had a third group of teenage boys who have conduct disorders, they don't behave well, but they are low scoring in callous and unemotional traits. So if they hurt someone, they do feel bad. So it's that group of boys with the conduct problems and who are callous and unemotional in their response to other people. It's not guaranteed that they will grow up to have a psychopathic profile, but they are at risk of it. So this was my colleague Esty Bidding, we asked the boys, just quite behaviourally, does this laughter make you want to join in? And even when you ask the question, the typically developing youth, they are rating the laughter as more contagious than the boys at risk of psychopathy. And when we do exactly what I showed you before and scan them listening to laughter, what we find is the typically developing boys, those neurotypical boys, they show a significantly greater priming response in the brain when they hear laughter than the boys at risk of psychopathy. Now, I'm not saying that psychopathy is entirely a problem of laughter. That's not clearly going to be something that's simple. But if you think about laughter being an unbelievably important social emotional expression that you're using to convey, well, effectively, I think a sort of social joy. I think that's the main thing that we've learned since Darwin's time, is the role of play and the role of social content and context that will affect how you laugh. If, for example, other people laugh and you don't join in, you are going to feel less bonded to those people. You are going to feel like you have less of a connection to them, and maybe it is simply easier for you to feel distanced from other people and treat them in a more utilitarian way, as psychopaths want to do. So the interesting thing about laughter is our expression of laughter, our use of laughter, and studying that lets us go from people's emotional worlds directly into their social worlds, because laughter is an expression of social joy that we typically produce when we're with others, or not, as we've seen here. And then the last thing just is that laughter does make things funnier. So we found that if you add laughter onto the ends of really terrible jokes, and there were stinkers, absolute stinkers, things like, what's the best day for cooking? Friday! And then we get people to rate how funny those jokes are, deliberately not funny. There's all the different jokes along the bottom here, and the line in red is the ratings of how funny the jokes are. And then we added laughter on the end, and we got other people to rate them. And what you find is adding any laughter onto the joke makes things seem funnier, and the more spontaneous the laughter, the more funny it makes the joke. So that seems to be kind of maybe because you're seeing people have a contagion effect. Maybe hearing the laughter is making you think more about why that could have been funny. And recently we took that back into the scanner and we found evidence for this. So when you here we've got funny words like frank, followed with laughter or not with laughter. When the word is followed by laughter, you get activation in those priming parts of the brain that I showed you before. And you also get activation, loads more activation out the back of the brain, in parts of the brain to do with imagery and vision and memory. So it's like when you hear laughter, it seems to be making you reappraise what you just heard and think about maybe, how could that be funny? What are the different attributes of this thing? What are the different associations or humorous memories I might have with it? And when I told this result to comedians, they say, well, yeah, obviously, because if I tell a joke or I say something funny on stage and I can hear the audience laughing, I become funnier because I know they found it funny. Stand-up comedy isn't like a broadcast and a response, it's an interaction, and that's laughter. Are you okay? That laughter is part of it. And then, of course, shortly after that, we went straight into lockdown, and everyone was trying to enjoy comedy on Zoom, where you couldn't hear other people laughing, and it wasn't the same. Very, very quickly, just on the point of different, I just want to just finish with something that is I think, interesting, because I've touched on this a little bit. What are the real similarities and differences between humans and other animals when it comes to laughter? So there are some very strong similarities, as we've seen. You find laughter in other animals, and in fact, wherever you find laughter, the first appearance of it is in infancy, when infants are tickled. So whether you're a rat or a gorilla or a chimpanzee, that's when laughter first appears. And of course, that also makes human babies laugh. It's associated with play. Devocalised rats who can't make any sounds, they will play with other rats and other rats will want to play with them, but they're more likely to get bitten because they can't make that sound that indicates their intentions are playful. And the play gets out of hand and becomes aggression. That's really complex in rats. And also, chimpanzees have two different kinds of laugh. Just like we laugh differently if we're laughing helplessly or if we're laughing conversationally, chimpanzees laugh differently if they're being tickled or if they're trying to make play last longer. Very similar to us. But there are some interesting differences. So humans laugh really loud. One of the reasons you probably didn't notice this, but you couldn't hear Coco laughing when Robin Williams was tickling her. And that's because gorilla laughter is really gentle and quiet kind of sound. We laugh loud. We laugh on an exhalation. Other apes laugh on an inhalation and an exhalation kind of thing. And we are laughing to be heard by everybody. Think about that kind of, maybe we're broadcasting it. We want people far away to hear our laughter. Human babies will also laugh at non-physical activities. So right from the outset, when human babies start laughing, tickling, physical contact is not the only thing that will do this. What's another way you can make human babies laugh? Yeah, peekaboo, tearing paper, funny noises, funny walks. Basically, the baby's picking up, it often seems, on your intentions to try and make them laugh. That's really interesting though, because that's, right from the outset, laughter can actually jump the gap between humans and babies in a way that it can't. It's a very physical activity for all other animals. And similarly, only humans learn to laugh contagiously. Again, laughter can jump the gap between humans. And I think that might link into humour, because you find as soon as humans appeared on the earth and they start marking things down, you find examples of things that are meant to be funny. It is, it seems to be truly a human behaviour, but you do not find any convincing examples of humour in wild animals. There's something different happening with animals that have exposure to humans, and I'm happy to take questions on that. But in the wild, the closest you find is teasing, like a monkey will pull the tail of another monkey and then run away. And nobody involved laughs, but you can kind of see, like the basis, children often will do something like, I'm being funny and I'll pull your pigtails or something. So there's a kind of similarity, but that's as close as you get. So maybe there really is, like laughter has some strong similarities with humans and other animals. But also I think it might also point us to some of the things that are really specifically human. And also laughter has been described as the shortest distance between two people, and I love this because it sort of gets to that closeness of laughter, the intimacy, the bonding, the affection, the love that you can be showing with it. And I certainly think that as scientists, and any budding scientists in the room, we need so much more work in this area, but we should definitely take laughter more seriously. Thank you very much.